Confucianism is one of the most influential philosophical traditions in human history. Originating in ancient China over 2 millennia ago, it has shaped not only Chinese civilization but also the moral, political, and social fabric of East Asia. Far more than a system of abstract thought, Confucianism is a living tradition, rooted in the human experience, in the relationship between people, and in the values that govern society. It is as much a guide for personal development as it is a blueprint for societal harmony. At the heart of Confucianism lies a vision of human flourishing built on the cultivation of virtue, reverence for tradition, and deep commitment to ethical behavior. It does not seek enlightenment through transcendence or escape from the world, but through meaningful participation in it, through fulfilling one's role in the family, community, and state. Confucian ideals such as filial piety, xiao, humaneness, ren, righteousness, ritual propriety, li, and loyalty, zhong, continue to resonate with millions and influence discourse across religion, education, governance, and ethics. This essay will explore the origin, evolution, and enduring relevance of Confucianism. It will examine the life and teachings of Confucius, the foundational texts, the tradition's expansion and adaptation through history, and its philosophical, social, and political dimensions. Finally, it will consider how Confucianism has endured in the modern world, particularly in East Asia, and what it offers to contemporary global society. Confucius, known in Chinese as Kongfuzi or Kongzi, meaning Master Kong, was born around 551 BCE in the state of Lu, in what is now modern-day Ciufu, Shandong province. His given name was Kongqiu. He lived during the late spring and autumn period, a time of considerable political chaos, moral decay, and social fragmentation. The Zhou dynasty, once a powerful and centralized empire, had weakened significantly. Regional warlords vied for power, and the old rituals and moral order seemed to have lost their unifying force. Born into a relatively poor family of the lower aristocracy or shi class, Confucius was orphaned at a young age and raised in modest conditions by his mother. Despite financial hardship, he was devoted to learning and became well-versed in the ancient classics, rites, music, and historical texts of the Zhou tradition. His early career included roles such as a record keeper, teacher, and eventually a minor official, though he would later withdraw from political life due to disappointment with corruption and misgovernance. By his 30s, Confucius had begun teaching a growing number of disciples. Unlike many scholars of the time who taught only the nobility, Confucius was notable for accepting students from various social backgrounds, as long as they demonstrated a commitment to learning and virtue. This democratizing aspect of his pedagogy would become central to the Confucian legacy. His fame grew as a moral teacher and reformist thinker who advocated a return to the virtues and rituals of antiquity. Believing that a society governed by ethical principles and proper conduct would restore harmony and justice, he sought employment as a political advisor across various courts. Though he achieved brief periods of influence, his reformist ideas were often rejected by power-hungry rulers, leading him to wander for many years with his disciples, promoting his vision of moral governance. Confucius returned to Lu in his later years and focused on teaching and editing classical texts. He died around 479 BCE, aged 72, largely unfulfilled in his political ambitions. Yet, the seeds he planted would flourish long after his death. The primary source of Confucius's teachings is the Analects, Luanyu, a collection of his sayings and dialogues compiled by his disciples after his death. Rather than a systematic treatise, the Analects presents brief, often aphoristic conversations that capture the spirit of Confucius's thought. Its power lies in its practicality, focusing on how to live virtuously, relate to others, and govern justly. At the heart of Confucian morality is the concept of ren, often translated as humaneness, benevolence, or goodness. Ren signifies a deep empathy and compassion for others. It is the fundamental virtue from which all others flow. Confucius said, "Ren is not far off, the person who seeks it has already found it." Ren is not a feeling alone but a mode of action. It means to treat others as one would want to be treated, to act with kindness, and to uphold the dignity of every human being. For Confucius, Cultivating Ren was the essence of being fully human. Equally essential to Confucianism is Li, translated as ritual, etiquette, or propriety. Originally referring to religious rites and ancestral worship, Li evolved in Confucius's thought to encompass the broader patterns of behavior, manners, and social norms that structure everyday life. Li serves to shape human emotions, enforce ethical conduct, and sustain social harmony. Whether bowing to an elder, observing funeral customs, or conducting official ceremonies, rituals create a shared language of respect and moral order. Confucius emphasized that even mundane actions, when performed with sincerity and respect, contribute to the cultivation of virtue and the maintenance of a just society. Xiao, or filial piety, is the virtue of respect and devotion to one's parents and ancestors. It is the bedrock of familial and social ethics in Confucian thought. Confucius held that harmony in society begins with harmony in the family. If individuals learn to honor and care for their parents, they are more likely to act justly in the community. Filial piety is not merely obedience but encompasses gratitude, care, and reverence. It reflects the Confucian conviction that moral education begins at home, and that family relationships are the prototype for all others, especially those between ruler and subject, teacher and student. It refers to moral righteousness, the ability to discern and do what is right regardless of personal gain. It is closely linked with integrity and justice. Confucius contrasted Yi with Li, suggesting that while Li regulates external behavior, Yi governs internal conscience. One who possesses Yi will act ethically even when Li fails or offers no clear guidance. Zhi, or wisdom, is the virtue of moral discernment. It involves learning, reflection, and the ability to apply knowledge ethically. Confucius encouraged relentless study and self-examination, insisting that wisdom is not innate but cultivated. After Confucius's death in 479 BCE, his disciples continued to teach and interpret his ideas, preserving his legacy and building what would become a living tradition. Two of the most influential successors, Mencius, Mengzi, and Xuanzi, played crucial roles in defining and debating the direction of Confucian philosophy. Their work established a framework for Confucianism that would influence Chinese society for centuries. Mencius, 372 to 289 BCE, known in Chinese as Mengzi, was a philosopher who expanded on the teachings of Confucius with a strong emphasis on the innate goodness of human nature. His writings, compiled in the Mencius, became one of the key texts of the Confucian canon. Mencius argued that all humans are born with a moral sense, comparable to having limbs, an instinctive capacity to feel compassion, shame, reverence, and right from wrong. These innate sprouts of virtue, Ren, benevolence, Yi, righteousness, Li, propriety, and Zhi, wisdom, must be nurtured through education and proper social conditions. He famously wrote, "The tendency of man's nature to do good is like the tendency of water to flow downward." Mencius believed that even in times of moral decay, individuals could cultivate virtue through reflection, proper guidance, and effort. His philosophy emphasized compassion in governance and argued that rulers have a responsibility to care for their subjects. If they failed, people had the moral right to overthrow them, a bold and revolutionary idea at the time. Mencius saw moral leadership as the key to effective rule. A true king, in his view, led by virtue and example, not by coercion or fear. He stressed benevolent governance, agricultural prosperity, and the welfare of the people. In this, he made Confucianism a powerful moral check on political authority. Xuanzi, c. 310 to 235 BCE, another major Confucian thinker, took a radically different approach. While he remained loyal to Confucian ideals, he disagreed with Mencius's optimism about human nature. Xuanzi argued that humans are born with selfish desires and chaotic impulses. Left unchecked, people would pursue personal gain at the expense of others. Moral cultivation, in his view, was only possible through strict education, discipline, and the guidance of ritual, Li, and law. He wrote, "Human nature is evil, goodness derives from conscious activity. Unlike Mencius, who trusted people to develop virtue naturally, Xuanzi saw transformation as a result of deliberate training. Rituals, customs, and laws functioned as tools to reform and elevate the human heart. Xuanzi placed great emphasis on hierarchical order and ritual as the foundations of civilization. He was more accepting of legal and authoritarian methods in governance, and his ideas would later influence the legalist school of thought, even if he himself remained committed to Confucian values. Over time, a body of texts emerged as the authoritative sources of Confucian thought. These were taught in schools, memorized by students, and used as the foundation for civil service examinations. The most significant collections are known as the Five Classics and the Four Books. Traditionally believed to have been edited or transmitted by Confucius himself, the Five Classics include 1. The Book of Songs, Xijing, a collection of ancient poetry reflecting everyday life, court ceremonies, and moral values. 2. The Book of Documents, Shujing, a compilation of historical records and speeches that offer insights into early Chinese governance and morality. 3. The Book of Rites, Liji, describes rituals, social norms, and conduct appropriate for various situations. 4. The Book of Changes, Yijing or I Ching, a divination text and cosmological treatise that links moral decision-making with the natural order. 5. The Spring and Autumn Annals, Chuanxiu, a chronicle of events in Confucius's home state of Lu, seen as a vehicle for conveying political judgments and moral lessons. During the Song dynasty, Neo-Confucian scholars such as Zhu Xi identified the four books as essential readings for understanding Confucian thought. These texts were eventually prioritized in civil service exams and Confucian education for centuries. 1. The Analects, Luanyu, Sayings and Conversations of Confucius. 2. The Mencius, Mengzi, Philosophical Dialogues and Political Thought of Mencius. 3. The Great Learning, Da Xue, focuses on self-cultivation and moral leadership. 4. The Doctrine of the Mean, Zhong, explores harmony, balance, and the moral development of the individual. Beginning in the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE, Confucianism became the foundation for the Chinese imperial bureaucracy. The state sponsored Confucian education and required mastery of the classics for anyone seeking government service. The imperial examination system, which persisted in various forms for nearly 2,000 years, enshrined Confucian values into the very structure of Chinese society. The exams emphasized memorization, literary style, and the application of Confucian morality, producing scholar officials known as shidafu, or literati. These officials were not only administrators but also moral exemplars, expected to guide society with integrity and wisdom. Confucianism thus became inseparable from the ideals of meritocracy, education, and virtuous governance. The official endorsement of Confucianism during the Han Dynasty marked a turning point in its history. It shifted from being one of many competing schools of thought to becoming the ideological backbone of the state. The Han Emperor Wu of Han, r. 141–87 BCE, adopted Confucianism as the state philosophy, influenced by the scholar Dong Zhongshu, who argued that the cosmic order and the moral order were one and the same. Heaven, Tian, favored moral rule, and the emperor's legitimacy rested on his virtue. Confucianism provided a moral vocabulary for justifying imperial authority, organizing society, and maintaining harmony. Its ideals of filial piety, hierarchical order, and ritual propriety aligned with the empire's interest in stability and control. While Confucianism dominated political life, it also coexisted with other schools of thought, especially Taoism and Buddhism. Over time, Confucianism absorbed metaphysical elements from these traditions, giving rise to Neo-Confucianism, a more systematic and cosmologically grounded version of Confucian thought. As Confucianism evolved over centuries, it entered a new phase during the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, a period of cultural flowering and intellectual revival. During this era, Confucian thinkers began to respond to the increasing influence of Buddhism and Taoism, both of which offered rich metaphysical systems and personal cultivation practices. The result was a reimagining of Confucian thought known as Neo-Confucianism. By the late Tang dynasty, Confucianism had lost some of its prominence due to the rise of Buddhist monastic institutions and Taoist religious practices. These systems offered profound spiritual frameworks, addressing issues like cosmology, the afterlife, and meditation, areas Confucianism traditionally avoided. Zhong scholars felt the need to reassert Confucianism's place in the intellectual landscape, not by rejecting Buddhist and Taoist thought entirely, but by integrating their insights into a Confucian framework grounded in humanism and moral order. The most important figure in the development of Neo-Confucianism was Zhu Xi, 1130 to 1200. His interpretations of the four books became the standard curriculum for civil service examinations for over 600 years, from the Yuan through the Qing dynasties. Zhu Xi constructed a comprehensive metaphysical system grounded in two key concepts. Li, the principle or pattern of the universe, a metaphysical ordering force that defines the nature of things. Qi, the vital force or material substance that manifests all things in the physical world. Zhu Xi taught that all things have Li, which represents their perfect, ideal nature, and Qi, which can be pure or impure. Human beings must work to purify their Qi through moral cultivation, study, and ritual. This system paralleled Buddhist concerns with spiritual purification but remained grounded in Confucian values like social responsibility, ethical action, and engagement in worldly affairs. Neo-Confucians emphasized a lifelong path of self-cultivation. To become a sage or noble person, Junzi, one must engage in introspection, reading of the classics, and the sincere practice of rituals. Zhu Xi's approach involved a dual focus. 1. Gewu, the investigation of things, through study and observation of the natural and human world, leading to the discovery of Li. 2. Jing, a sense of reverence and mindfulness in daily conduct, helping the individual maintain moral clarity. This fusion of metaphysics with ethics allowed Neo-Confucianism to compete with Buddhist spirituality while remaining true to Confucian social ideals. During the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, another influential Neo-Confucian thinker emerged, Wang Yangming, 1472 to 1529. He challenged Zhu Xi's method of moral cultivation through external study, proposing instead that moral knowledge is innate and accessible through introspection. Wang famously taught the unity of knowledge and action, Ji Xing He, emphasizing that moral insight must lead to moral action. He believed, to know what is right and not to do it is not truly to know it. Wang's more intuitive and introspective approach echoed Buddhist ideas of sudden enlightenment and influenced later Confucian practice in Japan and Korea. Neo-Confucianism solidified the Confucian worldview as a comprehensive system of ethics, metaphysics, politics, and social organization. This worldview is grounded in several key principles that informed life throughout the East Asian world. Confucianism sees the universe as a moral order. Heaven, Tian, is not a creator god but a moral force that rewards virtue and punishes vice. Human beings are part of this cosmic order and must align their actions with it through the cultivation of virtue. The phrase, heaven and humanity are one, encapsulates this belief. The moral behavior of rulers and citizens alike affects not only society but the harmony of the cosmos itself. Central to Confucian ethics are the 5 key relationships, which structure human society. 1. Ruler and subject. 2. Father and son. 3. Husband and wife. 4. Older brother and younger brother. 5. Friend and friend. Each relationship involves reciprocal duties, respect, care, loyalty, and justice. These relationships serve as the foundation of social harmony. By fulfilling one's role with sincerity and virtue, one contributes to the larger order of society and the cosmos. Confucianism supports a hierarchical view of society, where each person has a defined role, but it is not rigidly authoritarian. Hierarchy is justified by the need for harmony and ethical responsibility. Superiors are expected to lead with benevolence, and inferiors are expected to respond with respect. The family is the prototype for the state. Just as a father must be kind and a son obedient, so must a ruler be just and his subjects loyal. Confucianism emphasizes education as the path to virtue and public service. Unlike hereditary nobility, Confucian meritocracy holds that any person, regardless of birth, can rise in society through learning and moral refinement. This belief created a culture of scholarship that shaped the literati class for centuries and justified the civil service examination system, which selected officials based on Confucian learning. The goal of Confucian practice is to become a junzi, superior person, or noble person, who embodies righteousness, wisdom, and virtue. The junzi is not defined by social status but by moral character. Confucius contrasted the junzi with the xiao, the petty person who seeks personal gain at the expense of others. The junzi practices restraint, compassion, and self-cultivation, always seeking to improve and serve the greater good. Confucianism's influence extended far beyond Chinese borders. Through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange, it shaped the political and ethical frameworks of Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, each adapting Confucian ideas to their unique contexts. Confucianism took root in Korea during the Three Kingdoms period, but flourished under the Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1897, where Neo-Confucianism became state orthodoxy. It deeply influenced family structure, gender roles, education, and governance. The Korean version of Confucianism emphasized filial piety, loyalty, and social hierarchy, reinforced through village schools and family rituals. Even today, Confucian values remain embedded in Korean etiquette and social expectations. In Japan, Confucianism coexisted with Shintoism and Zen Buddhism. During the Tokugawa period, 1603 to 1868, Neo-Confucianism was promoted by the state to stabilize society. It justified the strict social order and informed the samurai ethic of loyalty, duty, and self-discipline. Japanese Confucians like Hayashi Reisen adapted Jushi's teachings to the needs of the shogunate, and Confucian academies flourished. However, Confucianism in Japan never displaced native religious traditions and remained one of several guiding philosophies. In Vietnam, Confucianism was adopted from China during periods of Chinese domination and deeply influenced its administrative and educational systems. The Vietnamese court used the Confucian examination system to appoint officials and promote Confucian values. Although Confucianism never fully displaced folk religion and Buddhism, it shaped Vietnamese views on family, governance, and moral conduct, especially among the educated elite. The arrival of the modern age brought unprecedented challenges to Confucianism. Western colonialism, modern science, industrialization, and revolutionary political ideologies all questioned or undermined traditional Confucian structures. Yet despite these upheavals, Confucianism persisted, evolved, and in many ways adapted to the modern world. The collapse of the Qing dynasty in 1911 and the rise of the Republic of China signaled the end of a Confucian political order that had lasted over 2 millennia. Reformers and revolutionaries alike blamed Confucianism for China's stagnation, feudalism, and resistance to change. The May 4th movement, 1919, was a turning point. Influenced by Western liberalism, Marxism, and science, intellectuals denounced Confucian ideals, particularly its hierarchical social structures, patriarchal values, and emphasis on obedience, as obstacles to progress. Figures like Lu Xun portrayed Confucianism as a symbol of repression. With the rise of the People's Republic of China in 1949, Confucianism fell further out of favor. The Communist Party, under Mao Zedong, viewed Confucianism as part of the old order they sought to destroy. During the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, Confucian texts were burned, ancestral shrines desecrated, and Confucian scholars persecuted. Ironically, the communists adopted some Confucian ideas, such as loyalty to authority, communal responsibility, and the importance of education, but stripped them of their traditional cultural and religious trappings. In recent decades, there has been a dramatic revival of interest in Confucianism in mainland China. As China's economy has grown and its global influence increased, the government has sought to fill a moral vacuum left by decades of ideological experimentation. Confucius is once again celebrated as a national sage. Institutes named after him, Confucius Institutes, have been established around the world to promote Chinese language and culture. Political leaders like Xi Jinping have cited Confucian ideas in speeches, emphasizing values like harmony, social responsibility, and national unity. At the same time, Confucianism is also being explored by scholars, educators, and spiritual seekers as a source of ethical guidance and cultural continuity. Outside mainland China, Confucianism maintained a stronger presence. In Taiwan, Confucian temples remain active, and Confucian holidays are celebrated alongside modern civic rituals. In South Korea, Confucian ethics continue to influence family structure, education, and social etiquette. While challenged by modern egalitarian values, Confucian legacies are still visible in workplace hierarchies and gender roles. In Japan, although Confucianism has declined in explicit influence, its ideals live on in corporate culture, ethics of loyalty, and educational philosophy. In the 21st century, Confucianism is no longer confined to East Asia. It is part of a global conversation about ethics, governance, identity, and human flourishing. Scholars in philosophy, political theory, and religious studies increasingly examine Confucian ideas alongside those of Plato, Kant, and other major thinkers. Confucianism is often described as a form of humanism, a worldview centered on the dignity, potential, and moral responsibility of human beings. It affirms that ethical behavior arises not from divine command or fear of punishment, but from the inner cultivation of the heart and mind. This humanism aligns with many values of the modern world: respect for others, education, community engagement, and moral leadership. It offers a relational ethic that emphasizes mutual care and responsibility over individualism. One of the most debated topics in modern Confucian thought is its compatibility with democracy. Critics argue that Confucian emphasis on hierarchy and obedience undermines egalitarian principles. However, modern Confucian scholars, like Tu Weiming, Daniel Bell, and Roger T. Ames, have proposed a Confucian democracy that blends participatory government with ethical leadership. In this model, rulers are expected to act as moral exemplars, and citizens are encouraged to develop virtues that support communal well-being. The goal is not just to protect rights, but to promote human flourishing through moral self-cultivation and public responsibility. Confucian cosmology sees humans as part of a morally ordered universe, not separate from it. This perspective has prompted new interpretations of Confucianism as a resource for environmental ethics. Scholars have pointed to the Confucian concept of Tianrenhei, the unity of heaven and humanity, as a framework for sustainable living. By viewing nature not as a resource to exploit but as part of an interrelated moral order, Confucian thought may help address ecological crises from a non-Western philosophical foundation. Despite revolutions, modernizations, and critiques, Confucianism has endured, not as a rigid dogma, but as a dynamic and adaptive tradition. Its lasting legacy can be found in multiple dimensions of life. Confucianism continues to influence political culture in East Asia. Emphasis on merit-based leadership, ethical governance, and social harmony shapes how states conceive of power and responsibility. The reverence for learning, memorization of classics, and moral education all stem from Confucian ideals. In societies like China, Korea, and Japan, the high value placed on academic achievement and filial responsibility has deep Confucian roots. Respect for elders, hierarchical roles, and communal values remain part of daily life for millions. While modern values challenge some aspects, especially concerning gender and individual freedom, the Confucian framework of interdependence and duty still resonates. Globally, Confucianism contributes to discussions on virtue ethics, communitarianism, and relational personhood. It offers alternatives to Western individualism and utilitarianism, emphasizing character, harmony, and the cultivation of inner virtue. Confucianism is not a relic of the past. It is a living tradition, rooted in the idea that human beings can become better, wiser, and more compassionate through reflection, learning, and moral effort. Its strength lies not in unchanging doctrines, but in its capacity to evolve. From the Analects of Confucius to the civil service of the Han Dynasty, from the metaphysical treatises of Zhu Xi to the modern revival in Chinese universities, Confucianism has adapted without losing its soul. In an age of rapid change, social fragmentation, and ethical uncertainty, the Confucian emphasis on self-cultivation, responsibility, and harmonious living may offer a timeless guide, not just for East Asia, but for the world. As Confucius himself said, "To learn and at due times to repeat what one has learned, is that not after all a pleasure?" Analects 1:1. Through learning and reflection, we honor not only a tradition, but the very best of what it means to be human.